Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. From the second that Jon Sumrall was announced as the next head coach of Florida, we all said the same thing. We said this on the instant reaction. Many of y'all said it in the comment section as well. I'll know better how to feel about the Jon Sumrall hire once I see the coaching staff that he brings in with him. Boy, over the last 10 days, has Jon Sumrall swung a monster stick in surrounding himself with an elite coaching staff. Like, it started with Brad White. That was the first hire he made, a grizzled SEC defensive coordinator that had sustained success at Kentucky in the SEC. Like, if you having success in this conference at Kentucky, feel pretty damn good that you're going to have success at Florida on the defensive side of the football. And then you go out and get Buster Faulkner. Now, look, I've seen the same buzz that many Florida fans have seen too with relation to Buster Faulkner and Southern Miss. Everything I've heard is that the expectation is he's going to be running the offense in Gainesville in 2026. Arguably the most coveted offensive coordinator hire that we've seen so far in this coaching search. And I'll say this, go back 12 months ago, there were a lot of coaches, a lot of programs that tried to pull Buster Faulkner out of Georgia Tech. Florida ends up getting this one done this offseason. That was the best hire that we've seen in terms of coordinator hires. I don't think we've seen a better one so far in this coaching cycle. All right, so you got the two most important hires, your coordinators, but what's it going to look like at the position coach rank? And Jon Sumrall came in and damn near cleaned house, right? The only coach that got retained from Billy Napier's staff was Coach Chapman. That was a no-brainer. I mean, one of the best defensive line coaches in the country. Everybody else, hey, we're trying to upgrade. And the name that, boy, do I love this one. Phill Trautwein, coaching the offensive line. Now, this is still a work in progress. We know Phill Trautwein has interviewed for Florida. It sounds like this one's going in the right direction. You talk about another elite hire for Jon Sumrall. Man, you are looking at one here with Phill Trautwein. It's not only because he's a Florida alum. Like, go look at the body of work he produced at Penn State and at Boston College before he even got to Penn State. If you wanted to make the argument that Coach Trautwein is a top 5 offensive line coach in the country, I wouldn't push back. Hell, I'd almost make the argument that he's a top 3 offensive line coach. This might be the most important coach to get right outside of your coordinators. You want to win in the SEC, you better get offensive line right. You know, Florida fans over the years have at times learned that the hard way. Ton of confidence that he would come to Florida and get things right on the offensive line. That's where I want to start. I want to go to some other candidates at some other coaching positions that we're hearing some buzz on. I also want to talk about a potential transfer portal target that has emerged for Florida. We got a lot to get into before we get into it. As always, the Florida fans, man, I can't thank you guys enough. And we've said it a lot over the last 10 days. Ever since Jon Sumrall took this job, we've had a lot to talk about. And the amount of support from the Florida fans has been freaking awesome. Can't thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We got a very busy next 90 days for this Florida program as this coaching staff comes together, as we focus our efforts into the transfer portal. A lot of commitments to talk about, a lot of coaching hires to talk about. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let me just take 2 minutes and talk about Coach Phill Trautwein. Number one, as a Michigan fan, I've watched a lot of Penn State football over the last 5 to 10 years. And ever since Phill Trautwein got there, it's been the strength of Penn State. Now, you talk about the success that James Franklin has had at Penn State. Yes, they've played some really, really good defense, but they haven't exactly had elite quarterback play. But they've always had a run game to lean on. That's what I think I like most is, number one, he recruits really well. It's a very talented offensive line that gets recruited at the high school ranks, and he retains really well. It's a really deep offensive line with guys that, look, offensive line 8, 9, 10 for Penn State, like starting caliber dudes. So it's a really talented unit. And shout out Phill Trautwein for recruiting those bodies to Penn State. He does a really good job retaining that talent. When you have a talented and deep offensive line room, chances are the product on the football field is going to be pretty dang good. What I love most about Phill Trautwein, he had to kind of reshape how he coached his offensive line when Coach Andy Kotelnicki took over as the offensive coordinator. Like Coach K does a lot of different stuff in the run game, and how well that Penn State offensive line adapted to the new play calling in the new scheme. You give a ton of credit to Phill Trautwein, not to mention the NFL draft picks that he's produced, not only at Boston College, but at Penn State as well. I mean, this is an offensive line coach that is proven at the highest level of the sport. Some of the best offensive lines we've seen in the last 5 years have resided in State College. You kind of had the feeling that they were going to swing big on the offensive line because, look, Georgia Tech's offensive line coach, Jeep Wade, I was kind of surprised that Buster Faulkner did not bring him over to Florida with him. Well, it sounds like they had some bigger and better plans, and that's going out and getting one of the best in the business. We'll see if Florida can get this one over the finish line. Boy, would this be a really good hire. And I'll say this, Florida probably has to go to the portal and grab an offensive lineman or two. There's plenty of guys that have plenty of eligibility that he was coaching at Penn State. Like the transition could be pretty damn good if Phill Trautwein can go bring an offensive lineman or two from State College. I mean, you got a top 10 offensive coordinator, we think, in Buster Faulkner. Probably a top 25 defensive coordinator in Coach White. Probably going to get a top 3 offensive line coach if you can get this one over the finish line with Phill Trautwein. You talk about starting hot, Jon Sumrall. And what I love is he's not, and he said this in his introductory press conference. Look, I ain't just going to hire my friends. I ain't going to just blindly hire the guys that I coach with Tulane. And look, that's not a knock on Tulane's coaching staff, which I think is pretty damn good. This is Florida. The access to talented coaches got a little bit bigger of a pool. Go use that pool. That's exactly what Jon Sumrall has done. This would be a very good hire. How about Derek Nix? Little buzzer on him being the running backs coach. One really good recruiter who has damn near owned the state of Mississippi on the recruiting trail for the better half of a decade, right? Spent a lot of time at Ole Miss, went to Hugh Freeze in Auburn. Here's the thing with Derek Nix. Go listen to how the coaching industry talks about Derek Nix. He's been around some really, really good, especially offensive-minded coaches. He's done a really good job developing both wide receivers and running backs. It sounds like he'll be the running backs coach if he gets this job at Florida. So, well-respected SEC position coach. What I love most is, look, one of the bigger concerns we had about Jon Sumrall was, all right, we know he's a good football coach, right? He won at Troy, then he won at Tulane. Everywhere he's been, he's won. Well, winning in the SEC is a little bit different. The difference between him and Billy Napier is Billy Napier didn't exactly surround himself with guys who've won and who've competed in the SEC. Like a lot of the coaching staff that Billy Napier brought in was either from his staff down there at Louisiana or other guys from the G5 or FCS ranks. I'm not really sure what's going. We're going to go back to Phill Trautwein real quick. Well, I guess what I'll say is that was weird. Billy Napier didn't exactly help himself have success in the SEC because he didn't really hire a ton of coordinators and position coaches who've been at the SEC level. I think Jon Sumrall recognized that, hey, winning at Tulane versus winning at Florida, a little bit different. It's the SEC. Why don't I surround myself with coaches who've competed and coached at the highest level? Some of these guys in the SEC, that's what Derek Nix is. Now, here's another very interesting conversation to have, and a conversation that's going to heat up over the next couple of weeks. What's the quarterback position look like for Florida in 2026? I was surprised when Kenny Minchey hits the transfer portal and some early names to monitor emerge. There's some early programs emerged to monitor with Kenny Minchey. Florida was listed. Now, what does that mean? It doesn't necessarily mean that Kenny Minchey is going to be a Florida Gator. But what it does tell me is that Florida might be looking to go to the transfer portal and land a quarterback. Whether that's Kenny Minchey, whether that's somebody else. We've talked about guys like Sam Leavitt. That's intriguing. Here's the argument for Kenny Minchey. Like if Kenny Minchey makes the move from Notre Dame to Florida, look, the track record isn't there with Kenny Minchey. We don't exactly know what he is as a starting quarterback at the Power 4 level. But we do have an idea based on what we heard from this kid during fall camp and spring practice. In spring practice, he beats out Steve Angeli. Just use the quarterback too. Beat Steve Angeli out for the quarterback 2 spot, right? Steve Angeli transfers to Syracuse, had a ton of success, before going down with that season-ending injury. So we get a sense, or a sense, I should say. All right, well, Kenny Minchie is probably better than Steve Angeli. And then you get the fall camp. Kenny Minchie's going head to head with CJ Carr. There were a lot of Notre Dame beat writers that thought Kenny Minchie was going to win that battle. That was a legit quarterback battle between Kenny Minchie, CJ Carr. CJ Carr slightly edges out Kenny Minchie. Well, CJ Carr looks like a top 15 quarterback in the sport. Like, what does that mean for Kenny Minchie? That the chance that, hey, Kenny Minchie was damn near going to win that job. Probably tells you that Kenny Minchie's pretty damn good. So although we don't necessarily have proof of concept, the reading the tea leaves of what went down at Notre Dame is telling us that Kenny Minchie's probably pretty damn good quarterback. Now, what's the benefit of bringing in Kenny Minchie? You do not have to pay him close to the money you're paying DJ Lagway. So you can bring in Kenny Minchie, but you can also bring in a lot more talent from the transfer portal around Kenny Minchie as well, because now all of a sudden all your money's not just going to DJ Lagway. And that was an unfair statement to make. There's a lot of other guys that are getting paid on Florida. It gives you some more firepower to build around the quarterback. Here's the thing with DJ Lagway, then this is kind of my personal take, is it's a really hard quarterback to let walk because we know what the ceiling looks like. If DJ Lagway stays healthy in the offseason, full spring practice, full fall camp, with an offensive coaching staff that we think is going to be pretty damn good, led by Buster Faulkner, like there's a chance DJ Lagway could be really good in 2026. We're not necessarily sure. That's a decision that this Florida staff has to make. I'm interested to note that, hey, Florida might be sniffing around for a quarterback. We'll have that conversation more when things heat up. It's an interesting conversation to have. But again, I'll say this to round it out. Really, I was skeptical, just like many of the Florida fans, when Jon Sumrall was announced, right? You had question marks about the feel that it was going to be similar to Billy Napier. It's been everything but. Look at the coaching staff hires he's making. The way he has completely galvanized this Florida fan base after one gosh darn press conference, which is very impressive. And lastly, really good job on the recruiting trail holding that class together. Jon Sumrall will be evaluated on his ability to win football games in the fall. The early evaluation in terms of what he's doing in the winter so far, in my opinion, pretty damn impressive. We'll see what this coaching staff looks like. Then we'll turn our attention to what's going to go on in the portal. Busy next couple of days and weeks. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.